So, warm welcome to Inner Fitness. Our topic today is energized. Are you feeling energized? Yes, fantastic. So, we're going to start with meditation, reflection as usual. Seated comfortably, but in an engaged way with a sense of interest. And using my mind to look inwards rather than outwards. I know I have the habit of looking at the outer world, the different scenes, situations, and activity, and the pull of the senses. But just for this moment, I'm going to focus completely inwards. The outer world going out of focus and my inner world coming into focus. The world of thoughts and feelings, attitudes and perspectives. And as I look inwards, I check in to see how am I feeling right at this moment. Not coming into words, just the thoughts. How am I feeling right at this moment? What is the state of my inner kingdom? And whatever state it's in, whatever I'm feeling, do I know the reason, the cause, the seed? What is creating that feeling? Whatever feeling I'm having, what has created it? This is what I will explore today. What creates my energy state within? Om Shanti. So, warm welcome again. And when you hear the word energized, what comes to your mind? What sorts of associations come into your mind when you hear the word energized? You can come into sound, you can unmute if you want, or you can type in the chat box. There appear to be no associations to the word energized. Oh,
Refreshed and revitalized.
refreshed and revitalized. Mhm.
Renewal.
Renewal. There's a lot of re words. Energy to do what is required without being burdened or annoyed. Beautiful. Energy to do what is required without being burdened or annoyed. Very nice. So, why did you choose re words?
That part that was shared about noise,
Yes.
energized, and something kind of superficial
Ah,
perception.
So inside, so partnered with what Neelu was sharing, that inside you could actually be feeling quite heavy or burdened or annoyed, but you're presenting in a quite, yeah. Mhm.
But there's an authenticity to it. Like I have again healing
Mm,
practice. It just
mm,
feels real.
real. Mhm. Raj, did you want to share anything?
I could, but I have some
Oh,
unexpected
I
guests
can't
where I'm
say.
sitting. But uh, I would say
Wait,
excited. That's
Raj, I think
my.
it's at our side. Just, is that off? No. Oh, okay. Just hang on, Raj. There's, what are we doing? Sorry, we are so technical over here. Okay, Raj, can you share again, please?
Could you hear me now?
I can. I'm not quite
Okay.
sure. Oh, okay. Yes, the technical mystery has sort of been solved. Go ahead.
Nice. I said I had few unexpected guests where I'm sitting, but this is
Oh,
good now. So
okay.
I would say energized is like I'm full of energy. That's the technical meaning behind it. But I kind of look at it more like I'm excited to do anything and everything. That's what I would say.
Yeah, so a lot of positivity, enthusiasm. We had this word enthusiasm this morning, which is not just I'm full of energy, but I actually have positive energy. I'm full of positive energy around what I am addressing, whatever it might be. Just before coming into this meeting, I was at a work project. And as is the time of year, everyone is trying to energize people online. And so we're doing this filming for the 12 days of Fitmas. And so there's 12 of us, and each of us have to come on, and you know the song, do 3 of this or 4 of that. And just before we started shooting the films, the person who's filming said, "Okay, so here's the rules. You can't come into sound, but and you can certainly come in front of the camera and do something silly because people really need positive energy right now, right? So something to make them feel very positive and light and happy." So it was very sweet because we all landed up looking. We're all adults, but we all landed up looking about 3 years old. So that will be a part of our focus today is what that's about. How come when we're energized we look like children? Raj.
I just wanted to share something. I know you one time mentioned that video. You said 8 positions of heart. I guess that's
Yeah.
what the name
Yeah.
was.
The eight
So
postures of the heart.
8 postures of heart. So whenever on the weekend or whenever it's my day off, like the first thing I do when I wake up, I don't do yoga much. I do a little bit, but then I watch something, Eric or like any speaker or even Murali. So whatever I could. So I was listening to that and
Mm.
watching it on TV. So like I don't remember all 8 postures, but they said like, first is seeking and then meeting and the third is dancing. So when I'm
Yes.
energized, I feel like dancing.
It feels like you're dancing. It's
Yeah.
either coming into actual physical dance or internally.
Yeah, I
That's
could do the
very
physical
nice.
dancing too, but yeah, that's my yeah,
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. Absolutely. Very
yeah.
light. And connected to what Nilu was sharing, that it could even be something quite physically demanding or demanding in some other way, mentally demanding. But depending on the state I'm in, I could be actually quite energized or have lots of energy to bring to it. So I don't feel burdened. So it's a really interesting concept, energized. It's actually quite central to life. Energy. We as souls are described as points of spiritual energy. And a huge part of our journey through time and activity and this, as we say, physical or human experience is how we manage our energy. So, yesterday I was feeling, it feels like there's been a cosmic shift in the energy. It felt like the whole world just sort of went, "Ah." And I think during these times there are palpable shifts in the global energy. If it feels like there's a light at the end of the tunnel, then energy goes up, or restrictions are lifted and energy goes up, and if they're imposed, then the energy goes down. The point being, of course, that we've reached a time, and it has to do with our energy states at this time, but we've reached a point where our energy, our sense of feeling energized, is deeply affected by what's going on outside. So I hear something outside, I see something outside, something happens outside, and it affects my energy state. So I might hear some news and my energy will go down or go up depending on that. So it's very affected by what's going on outside at this time. And that's a little bit different than how we necessarily operate as children or even beyond. I remember one one person I knew, she was a director of the dance group. So she this soul, I mean, it was almost draining to be around. I know that sounds strange. They had a ridiculously unusually high level of energy. I wondered if they were ADD because their energy levels were always up here. And you'd be like, whoa. So some they're just, kind of self-generating energizer bunnies. But for the most part, even she would be affected by things happening outside. So, in general, it's helpful to know as spiritual beings how our energy works. And also at this point, and the re word is very interesting at this point, what I need to do to manage my energy. So, we have something in science called the law of entropy. I know. It's like had science into the conversation. So in very simple terms, because that's all I really understand, in a closed energy system, such as what we have here in our lives, in a closed energy system, there's this law that energy is going through transformations. Energy can't be created or destroyed, but it will go through transformations where there's less and less useful energy available. The rest is just chaotic. It's not really useful or ordered. So if we look at the planet, there's a huge concern over energy, right? That we've got lots of energy crisis conversations and climate change conversations. There's a big concern over energy. And there's a lot, what we're seeing is a lot of waste in our energy usage. So we use some energy, and there's, some of it's usable, but there's a lot of waste in our processing of energy. And it's really just a mirror. The external energy situation is really a mirror of what's going on with us as spiritual beings, spiritual energy, is that we're using our energy less efficiently given the transformations we've gone through. It's a very basic transformation that's happened to us. We are spiritual, non physical, very subtle, refined energy. And in our pure state, when we're not connected to matter, we are in this incredibly, incredibly beautiful, subtle state, which we experience as peace or silence. We use the word shanti. But as we come into energy, that is, as we start to come into these bodies and express through them and interact and with matter, this more, if you will, gross energy, physical, visible energy, does start to affect us. It's like a battery. We're using our subtle energy to move the gross energy. And at first, we do it very efficiently, very wisely, very beautifully in a pure way. But eventually, we start to be affected by this physical context we're in, and our energy starts to become, there's less and less useful or powerful energy available. There's a lot of waste. So when we look at what we think about during the day, we're reminded the other day that we produce thousands of thoughts. How many thoughts a day? 30 to 50,000 thoughts a day. First off, that's a ridiculously high number of thoughts. I'm sure when we're at our pure subtle level, we do not produce that many thoughts. It's just crazy in a 24, like what does that come down to in a minute? I mean, how many thoughts are we? I know there's 1,440 minutes in a 24-hour cycle. So if you do the math, yeah. It's just, yeah, and we're not even awake for, although when we're asleep, we're also creating thoughts. So that's a very high, that alone is draining our energy to be working that much, creating thoughts. But then, this is the interesting part. What are the quality of those thoughts? Now, it's difficult for us to say because we don't pay attention to a lot of the thoughts that we create. They're kind of just automatically spewing out. You've probably created quite hundreds of thoughts right now in just this little time we've been together. They're just kind of sometimes just kind of, they're very reactive and they just flow out and we're not really paying attention. But it's been shared that at least about 80% of our thoughts, I think much more at this point, is complete waste, which means they're not really going anywhere. They're not really useful. They don't lead anywhere. There's worry, there's regret, there's obsessive thinking, there's controlling others. I mean, there's a lot of really useless thinking going on. No offense. We're all doing it. So we're all in the same boat together. So this waste, lots of waste. There's waste words, waste thoughts, waste actions, wasted time. There's a lot of waste, and it's completely understandable because we, as souls, in our journey through time, we're subject to the law of entropy. We're in a closed system. Our energy is becoming more chaotic, less efficient, less beneficial. It's completely understandable. And this is why the words that Nora was sharing are so interesting. What are we going to do to revitalize that energy, to get that energy back, to recharge? We're going to have to open the system. And this is why Raj Yoga is so interesting. But going back to this concept of we start like a fully charged battery. And then as we interact with matter and we go through transformations, we begin to think we are matter. Again, we are conscient energy. We're a very unique form of energy. We're used to physical matter energy. Science studies that. Science is challenged to study us, spiritual energy, because we're not visible, but we are conscient, subtle spiritual energy, energy that can think and feel and decide. Such unique form of energy when you think about it. And when we start, we're completely pure, fully charged in our highest state of operation, which we call intrinsically good or pure. So the way we express our energy is in very uplifting or elevated ways. And that really keeps our energy states actually quite high. We know that when we have a positive thought, it energizes us. So if we're constantly operating that way, our energy leakage is very minimal. But we are operating through a body, and that alone is draining our energy until we start to think we are the body. So it's transformations in consciousness that we're going through. We're not being destroyed, but we are changing from naturally experiencing ourselves to be souls. We're starting to think we're the body, our consciousness, that energy that is us is changing, our consciousness is changing. And because of that, we're coming into more and more waste. But if we look at that first state, very pure, we get glimpses or reminders of it whenever we see small children. Small children aren't yet fully assimilated into thinking that they are bodies. They kind of aren't really fully there yet. We know they're not because they have to go through this whole process of figuring out how to use the body as if it's some sort of foreign spaceship they just launched into. They have to sort of figure out how to use it. And wow, are they energetic? Crazy. Just coming here today, I had to stop and pick up some things at the grocery store. And as I'm parking the car, I see a mother with 3 children. And I'm just like, wow, they're running around nonstop. And do you know what it takes to get adults to do that? I mean, in a fitness class, it's really hard to get them to give us that kind of energy. So they're just woo all over the place, and the mother's just trying to keep up. So we're very energetic because our state is so pure. Our haven't yet come into that consciousness. We had a brief period of recharge at that time that we call rebirth. So what is that recharge? What really deeply energizes us? Yes, pure or positive thoughts definitely will give us a lift, an energy, an injection of energy. But a very deep reset is going to require opening the system, and we say introducing an energy source. And again, remember, we are consciousness. So we know what introducing an energy source looks like for, say, a car, right? What happens with the car, it's a great example again of the current times. It was very interesting. I mean, I know it was just a drama and it was being just, an interpretation. Of course, it's not fact, but the suggestion that at the beginning of automobiles being introduced, there was this sort of choice. Should we use fossil fuels, so gasoline, etc., or what we now call green energy, electric cars? Both were being developed, but which one was chosen and why? Where were we in our journey such that we would choose that versus electric? So again, we were already so subject to entropy that we even made decisions that are subject to entropy. So what does it look like when we fill the car with gas? I go open the system, right? I open up the gas and put in new energy. Fill up the tank. So I refuel the car, and then I go driving off. And we know there's a lot of waste. There's lots of emissions. We know this is a huge problem. So very little of that energy I just put in, despite their attempts to make energy efficient vehicles, there's still a lot of emission. So it's just a sign of the times. And eventually the system's closed. I'm starting to run out of useful energy. There's a lot of useless energy, but running out of useful, there's a lot of useless, but that useful energy is running low. So I have to open the system again and refuel, link up to an energy source. So that's what it looks like physically. It's like, I plug in, recharge the phone. We know what it looks like physically, but what will this look like for a spiritual being such as the self? I can't just put my finger into a socket. That's a very bad idea. What am I going to link up to recharge my consciousness? What's that refuel, recharge going to look like? And what does it mean to open the system to connect to an energy source? Souls now are so tired, so low on energy. It's like, I need hours of sleep in the day. I need to, and yet, really, we have to look honestly at how we use our energy in the day. And we're thinking a lot, lots of waste thoughts. How do we use our time? Right now, we had a beautiful class this morning, but I was in a conversation a couple of mornings ago talking about distraction or use of energy, use of time. And I know it's funny because we're right now on the internet to be together for this, but there's a lot of activity, viewing, social media, internet. How am I using my time? Is it draining or refueling? So, this is a closed system, and I think we will continue to get more and more drained. And a key part of that is, as we said at the beginning, deeply affected by situations outside. This is also a sign of being very low energy, deeply affected by what's going on. The energy of things outside really influence me. You know, souls are feeling certain things. I'm like, I don't know why I'm feeling this way. Nothing horrible happened to me today. But there is an energy in the atmosphere right now, globally. And although we like to blame it on a little tiny, tiny microscopic virus, it's actually our energy state that's making us susceptible to having this kind of drainage in response to what's going on. So there's lots of anxiety and fear and irritation and just fatigue in the atmosphere. And because we're low energy, we're easily colored or affected unless we are consciously plugging into an energy source at this time. It's very funny. I have many I know do this. I have an alarm that I use in the morning. It's on the phone. And for maybe 3, 4 weeks, the oddest thing happened is that I would use the alarm in the morning. And then by about 8 o'clock that evening, even though it started at 100% the phone, it was completely drained at the end of the day. Every day, it completely drained. I was like, what's going on? So I'd have to recharge, plug it in every night. And then maybe a couple of mornings ago, it started to hold its charge. It wasn't draining anymore. Now, I don't know what was going on. I'm sure you know far better than I. But whatever the case, it was very thought provoking because I think as spiritual beings, we're being very affected by things. And it is really accelerating the drainage of our energy. We were already draining. It's really accelerating it unless I am consciously, deliberately making effort, being proactive to plug into an energy source. So, something that's outside of the system, outside of the global situation, I need to plug into an energy source. And as mentioned, this is really what something like Raj Yoga specializes in, is helping us to recharge, refresh. And it's really the essence of life. If I have no energy, I just lie there like a sloth. No offense to sloths, but I just kind of lie there and don't do anything. Where I'm actually built as a soul to express and create and interact, and none of that's going on. We actually sometimes even refer to it as something like a state of depression, that my energy states are really, really depressed. So, how can I plug into that? And I was thinking a lot that we have, as spiritual beings, three capacities. Now, ultimately, all three of them will want to come together and plug into this energy source. It's like a plug, an electric outlet that has those three prongs, and we want all three to plug into this energy source. Absolutely. So we'll come to that in a moment, but also until such time as we accurately get that connection going on, because it takes a little bit of finesse, there are things I can do with my three capacities that I probably will need to keep an eye on during the day so I don't lose my charge. And one of those capacities is the mind, the capacity to think, create thoughts. We've already talked about that how am I using the thoughts? What kind of thoughts am I creating? If I'm paying no attention to my thoughts, it appears that automatically at this point, there'll probably be a high percentage of waste, a lot of reactivity in my thinking. It's just, again, understandable because of the energy state I'm in. So I will have to deliberately, proactively, consciously create a different quality of thoughts. I can't just kind of let thinking go along as it wants because it will be waste. I need to be actively creating thoughts. And one of the things that I've noticed, and perhaps you have as well, and again, guilty because we're sitting here talking to you online, but a lot of the activities that we're doing at this time, because people are at home connecting through the internet, they actually are quite passive. I kind of just like you sort of are now, although I'm going to change that in a moment. You just sort of sit and receive. And if you want, you can go off and do other things. You're not really held accountable. You could leave if you want. Things that we normally wouldn't do if we were physically together. I mean, we hear stories of people just dressing from the waist up, waist down, whatever. I hope they have some clothes on, but it's just we're getting very passive. And I realized for myself, passive in many ways, getting very passive. And I realized in myself, I've got to get on. I've got to have a level of self-direction, self-efficacy, self-discipline to not succumb to that slide into passiveness. And so this really begins with my thoughts. I can't be passive in my thinking, can't be I have to be proactive. So what kinds of thoughts energize me? That's the question. Just starting with our capacity to think. What kinds of thoughts will energize me, give me energy? I'm going to give you a scenario to play with in order to assist you in the response. I think on many, many days, we have our political leaders, our ministers, our medical officers coming on to the TV streaming and giving us updates or media press conferences. So I want you to imagine that you are viewing one of these, and we have our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, is at this point, he's doing them from in front of his home. So he's in front of his home outside, and it's a press conference. And so he delivers a bit of a speech, a bit of an update, and then the media gets to ask him questions and he responds. So you're watching this. What kinds of thoughts are going through your head as you're watching this? I don't know if you would be watching it, but just if you can imagine if you've never seen that. What kinds of thoughts are going through your head? Sorry? Why is he standing outside his home? It is. He has on a winter coat. I want to put a hat on his head. I'm positive his ears are cold, but anyways, that's just me. Maybe I'm projecting. That's the thoughts you have. Is why is he standing up? Uh,
How does
right.
it affect me what he's
How does it
trying to
affect?
deliver? Yeah.
Mm. Sorry? No, you weren't giving silly answers. How does it affect me what he's saying? Is he being authentic? On the physical level? Hmm. Absolutely. So, again, we have a great example with respect to our mind of how I think in the closed system and how I think in an open system. So, very often when we are witnessing a scene, and usually I'll be honest, in these scenes, um, he is playing the political role quite well, being extremely diplomatic in how he's responding to questions. And in a closed system, what I'm going to see is a politician answering questions from the media. And so I will have those kinds of thoughts. How does it affect me, of course? And is he really telling the truth? Is he authentic? And can I believe? And all those kinds of thoughts, very natural. But what if I open the system? Now you're aware that we're all souls and we're all suffering from the same issue, which is a loss of energy. And when we lose energy, we operate, yes, in a less, perhaps a less authentic way, but we don't operate at our best. No one operates at their best when they're low on energy. I don't, you don't, nobody. So now as I watch any leader, I feel there's just thoughts of compassion, thoughts of how can I support you? I completely understand why you are presenting this way. I would do the exact same thing. There's very different, when you open the system, that is, have more information in any story. When you see any situation, yes, I could have thoughts of judgment and cross examination, all kinds. But then I could receive information about the context, more information about the story, and it will completely change how I think about it. So, this is the power of opening the system in terms of how I think. And we're constantly going through the day, seeing things, hearing things, ourselves speaking things, and then it affects our thoughts. And the thoughts I'm having affect me much more than they're going to affect anybody else. They come back on me. They're draining or recharging my system. And when I have thoughts based on this larger information, what we call spiritual or unlimited knowledge, this larger information that we are all souls, all doing the best we can while suffering from energy drainage. If I understand that, then my thinking is completely different. And that applies to our next capacity, the intellect, how we see things. And it's again very connected. Do I see a politician who's talking to the media, or do I see something else? Do I understand the situation in a different way? What is my perspective? And more importantly, my attitudes as I view things. The types of decisions I make, the type of stance that I assume, the attitudes I hold can be extremely draining. And again, I think I'm doing something to someone out there, but it's coming back onto the self in terms of that energy management. The intellect is remarkable in terms of decision making, but its decision making is only as good as the state of the intellect. So, for example, when I go into the store, it's kind of scary. It happened today. So, I'm going to buy a product. I'm trying to decide, should I buy this product? So, I turn the product over to see the ingredients. Now, as you know, to fit the list of ingredients and the directions and everything onto these little packages, they have to write very, very small, very, very small. And so, as I look at I actually can't see it. It's very difficult for me to make a decision because I actually can't read the writing. It's too small and this body is quite aged. So I'm going to have to somehow improve my decision making capacity, improve how I'm seeing things. So I do this thing, right? For those of you who know what that is, and try to improve my capacity to read something that small, that close. And as soon as I'm able to see, my decision making will improve, it will enhance my decision making. So, what can I do to improve my intellect during this time of really, possibly low energy? And what we've been realizing lately is that less is more. Um, However, I can introduce more silence into my inner activity. Only, I love this term, only essential services. We hear that a lot lately, only essential services. And I think we need to internalize that. Only essential activity. There was a very interesting program that would explore the human condition in very unusual ways. It was called Star Trek, The Next Generation. And I always remember those scenes where the ship's energy systems are being sucked or drained or something like that. And the captain would always say, all right, just go to essential services. Only oxygen, like you'd see the lights would dim, everything. Only essential energy systems run until we've sorted out what the problem is. Only essential systems. And I know for me, it's like I will stop if I feel myself wandering into wasteful attitudes. It's like my intellect, I have to have more silence. I can't afford waste right now. I can't afford it. Again, how to manage my own. So this is the decision I make, just like I do this, lift the glasses up. My intellect, my decision maker needs to be really focused on this specific decision. How can I stick to only essential services internally? I'm not talking about externally, I'm talking internally, only essential functions in terms of what I think about, what I look at, what I talk about, only essential. Even if I have to go to media to get an update, only essential. Do not get sucked in there. Only essential. If we could see how it's draining us when we're already drained, we'd be quite concerned. And then our last capacity to express. This is a very interesting one, which we explored today. Spirituality is always the opposite of physicality. So, in the physical realm, if I give something, then I have less. So, if I have $20 in my pocket and I give you 10, I now am $10 more poor. I have less. That's not the way it works in spirituality. When you give, what you receive multiplies. So, this is very important when it comes to expression. We call it sanskars, but what I'm expressing, I need to be very generous, very forgiving, very gracious, very merciful. And it needs to be authentic. It can't have some sort of hidden agenda. It needs to come from an authentic place. All three of these activities are only really going to be possible if that three prongs plug into an energy source. I will not be able to think in a very unlimited way, to maintain that silence, that essence, and to give an authentic way unless I am plugging into an energy source. It's important that I do those activities, but I'm only going to be able to do them if I myself am plugging into an energy source. So the three prongs, those three capacities need to be fully engaged in this energy source. And this energy source has to be outside of the closed system. Anywhere I plug into here, it's going to drain me because it's already draining. So I need to plug into something that's not draining, that's fully charged. Just like when I plug my phone into the recharger, I am assuming that it's going to get a charge, that the charge isn't going to be sucked from it, but it's actually going to get energy. I make that assumption. So we need to plug into something that will recharge us. And again, this idea that we're spiritual beings. How do you recharge spiritual energy? And the reason it's so intriguing is that we know we need to do it, but we keep going to physical outlets to try and do it. We're empty, but we keep using physicality to try to fill us up. We're really quite at a loss as to how do you recharge the self, spiritual energy. And I will need to plug into a spiritual source. Now, depending on the culture, we might call this source God or the divine, but it's just really a power source, is what we're talking about. A soul who does not ever leak. No matter how much you plug into them, they stay charged, just like the energy flow current coming through that electric outlet in the wall. It just keeps flowing, this unending source of power. This really is what the supreme soul, the supreme power source is about. What he specializes in is being a source of power. The question is, how do I plug into that being? How do I plug into that being? And if I am in a physical state, it's going to be very difficult to plug into a spiritual source when I myself am immersed in physicality. There's no connection. I'm sure that sometimes you've been speaking to someone, and although you're speaking the same language, you don't feel like you're connecting. You're not on the same wavelength, not connecting. And this is the issue we have with God, is that we're not quite on the same wavelength. That being is on a spiritual wavelength, and we are on a very physical wavelength, to the point that we think we're bodies. Very, very physical wavelength. So, this idea, this first step of I need to get myself onto that spiritual wavelength, and the connection will be quite natural. How do I do that? Simple, simple. I have to remember I'm a soul. Now, to remember I'm a soul is a little bit different than thinking I'm a soul. I could have the thought I'm a soul, but I still feel I'm Judy. I'm this body. Like nothing's actually changed. So obviously this is a very deep shift, and probably, we're so rusty at it and a little frightened of it, because not only have I come to think of myself as the body, but I now have two problems, which is really the same problem. I'm really low in energy, and I'm very, very habituated to thinking I'm the body, very attached. And the attachment comes when I'm low on energy. We attach very deeply when our energy is low. So it's very frightening for us sometimes to let go of thinking I'm the body. We're worried that we'll lose everything, or it won't exist, or what's that going to mean? So we kind of have to work very understandingly with the self. But until I get into that spiritual state, the connection isn't really going to happen. I can have thoughts about God, but I'm not actually going to be receiving that power flow. We spend a lot of time sending energy one way to God. We're trying to receive energy the other way. And so, this idea of, even as I sit here, to gently start to think that I exist and I am separate from this body. And being separate from the body does not change the fact that I still exist. So, really helping the self to move into soul consciousness while acknowledging that there might be some fear of letting go. But once I start to move into that state, it's as if I've come out of the closed system, and I am now in what we call God's world, that open system, that space of silence where I can connect to that being. So I don't know if there's any thoughts or questions. I'm looking at the time. We should probably end with a little reflection. Is there anything anyone wants to share or say or ask or sing or dance or
I'm Shanti.
option?
So when you say, instead of thinking, most of the time that's what we do. We just think about God and nothing really happens, but we kind of feel good because we were doing something, positive. But
Mm-hmm.
when we remember, then remembering is more like, even though we don't remember much,
Yeah.
honestly, right? We don't remember God either. That's the truth. But for many of us, but when we try to remember, it's just we try to feel deeper in that feeling of
Mm-hmm.
trying to
Yeah.
remember him, right? It's just like,
Mm-hmm.
when we remember, then we just kind of get lost. We just forget the present. We just, you know, connected with that soul, even if we're trying to remember our past. So similarly, when we try to remember God, we just kind of forget this body, forget the present, and we're just trying to seek to connect with God. Would you
To
clarify it
some
more? Yeah.
degree, because it's actually can be a very integrated state. The idea is that we want to remember that being as we're doing things, as we're walking, as I'm talking to you right now. And so to remember, forgive the pun, that the word remember means to belong to again. That's all it means.
Okay.
So children remember their father while they're playing at school and running around. It's very natural. They say, I am a child of that one. Now, the question is for them, they don't even need to repeat it to themselves or make a show of it. It's just their identity. So we're talking about what is my identity? What is my reality? What reality or paradigm do I belong to? I can function completely. We've become very natural at remembering other things, which is why we say everyone is actually quite yogi. It's what they're having yoga with that's the problem. But everyone's quite yogi. We're always belonging to something. It might be a family, it might be a club, it might be an idea, ideology, in the sense that I really embrace it as my identity. I don't even have to think about it. It's so natural. And we say, and it really shapes my identity, my sense of self. So to belong to God is this massive reframing of my sense of self that I experience, not just that I might think about it, but I'm not really feeling it. I feel I am a spiritual being. I'm not this body. Those things I thought were mine, they're not. Like it's again, we call it the actor awakening. It's this massive, deep shift in consciousness. So I can still be acting and interacting, but my sense of self has profoundly shifted. And again, it's difficult for us to go there because we're so attached. We've gotten to a point where we deeply belong to these other forms of self, very physical. So I'm the child of so and so, I'm the body, I belong to this, that's my fireplace. It's a beautiful fireplace. That's my fire. So this is very natural for us, very, very natural. We don't have to I don't have to walk around all day saying, I'm Judy, I've got to remember I'm Judy. I got to remember. I mean, it's just if someone says Judy, I'll turn my head. Someone could whisper Judy and I'll turn my head. It's just so deeply ingrained belonging to that paradigm. So you can appreciate, and I think this is where the compassion comes, appreciate this is quite a shift that no, I'm not Judy. This body I'm sitting in is named Judy. And as you look now at the screen, you're probably seeing a physical package and there might be interaction with that, but there's a personality fueling this package, and that's me. That's me, the soul. Remove me from this body, and all you've got is non living matter, which we call a corpse. Would you call that Judy anymore? Probably not, but it is. This body is named Judy, and I am the being inside that's animating it. And I have a very short term relationship with this body, finite. So, this is a massive reframing, feeling of our sense of self. And it is in this reframing, although it might feel at some level like oh my gosh, I have to let go of something massive here. But they have that saying, no, I'm not losing a daughter, I'm gaining a son-in-law. Like I'm gaining this connection or this sort of access to this whole other world. When I say I am a soul, I'm gaining access truly to God. That God does not have a body of his own. So, and yet he exists. So to be able to connect to that being, I have to come into that different consciousness. And I can really appreciate why we struggle with this or skip over this step and just kind of do what we've always done. And yet we find we're still bothered and our energy is still affected by things outside, a sign of low energy. It's because it is a massive shift that can be quite frightening. So we say, I don't know how to do it. We do. That's the funny thing is, we do know what we need to do. And at some level, it terrifies us. We know exactly what's involved in considering ourselves to be a soul. And at some level, conscious or unconscious, it's like, I wouldn't say it terrifies us, but it does terrify ego, desire, attachments, greed, all of that paraphernalia that developed when we think we're the body. They are quite concerned that we don't become aware of ourselves as a soul. So there's a lot of opposition, and so we say we must have deep love. I wouldn't say just for God, deep love for the truth. The truth is extremely energizing. The truth is, if I think I'm this body and I know this body will perish, then that means at some point I will perish. And then we try and figure out ways around that, like codicils and a legal argument. No, 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 no. I have afterlife. Well, what is that? Like, really think deeply. What are you saying when you say afterlife? You're saying that you are experiencing after the body has perished. You are still experiencing. Lord knows I don't want to drag this decomposing body with me. So so really to think at some level inside, we know that we are souls separate from the body. We know this. But the massive shakeup it's going to create in how I've ordered my life, how it will threaten ego and all these other attributes that have developed, it's just, whoa, that's really overwhelming. And yet there is this temptation. You really want peace, you really want happiness. It's only going to happen when you experience the truth. And deep down, I think we know this is true. Sometimes we are in that truth, we're very keen to not see others physically. We feel it's discriminatory, or we feel it's exclusive, or so we kind of play that card sometimes. We're very selective. What about constantly being in that consciousness? There is absolutely no loss, zero loss in experiencing myself to be separate from the body. There's no loss, but there is a lot that is gained. And so just to take time in that very rudimentary exercise, understanding, appreciating, being very compassionate, there will be opposition. So I have to be patient. But that deep love, I want to experience the truth. And how urgent it seems at this time to experience the truth. Because if I continue to think in a very physical way about myself, I will be increasingly affected by what's going on around me in the world outside. The world's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It seems to be going into all sorts of upheaval, uncertainty. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It's trying to reset itself. And it's signaling me, you have to reset yourself too. And if I don't get the signal, if I don't do what the world's inviting me to do, if I keep thinking in a physical way, I will just be so distressed by what's going on. I will really discharge at a very, very quick rate. So we're getting wonderful signals. Connect to the truth, connect to what's imperishable, connect to what's constant, connect to anchors of spirit. Like we're getting the signal so strongly. We should appreciate what's going on because it's signaling us this way. But I also appreciate that it's very frightening for souls to go into what they feel is unfamiliar. But I don't think it's unfamiliar. I think at some level we know that we are not these bodies. We know that we are spiritual beings. And I think perhaps we think, oh, it's so inconvenient to do this effort. It's not, it's actually critical. So I think we probably need more time or a whole Raj Yoga course to really properly explore this. But managing our energy seems so important right now, um, because there's such a sort of energy in the world, and we're at a time when I really, really am being pulled to recharge, to reset, and needing to know exactly how to do that. It's easy with the phone. I plug it in to an energy source to recharge it, energize it. And it is easy with the self as well. It's just that we're not physical, so we're plugging into a spiritual source. So I think we should probably look at ending there. I don't want to cut off Nora or Nilu. And Raj's, her sharing was great and deserves really more time. So we'll have to think about how we can take it up. But Nora and Nilu, is there anything that you want to share? Okay. Nilu, anything you want to share? Silence. All right. I hope I'm not cutting anyone off. We'll just end with a reflection. Oh, there we go. Not this point. Thank you. We'll just end with a reflection. With just one thought as I'm sitting here, I start to turn inwards. I notice how easily, when my energy is projecting outwards, looking at what's going on, thinking about what's going on out there, I can feel my energy draining. And there is a natural reflex to withdraw, to come inside and find a space inside that's quiet, like a sanctuary inside. The noise of the outer world, thoughts of the outer world want to come inside. But there is a space where they don't enter, a spiritual space, a space which seems beyond any sense of time, a space where I can let go of all roles and responsibilities, thoughts about relationships, activity. So it's a very uncluttered, quiet space. A space where there is the energy of what is eternal. And it's such a refreshing space to come into. And the moment I enter it, it's like walking out of a costume. a very deep and timeless experience of myself in this space. Just I, the thinker, the experiencer, the observer. There is a stillness, a calmness in this space that I love to withdraw into. It's a space where I feel my energy is being restored. There's no pressures, no worries, not even any fears. There's no fear of letting go in this space. It's just a relief to release. In this space, it feels as if my mind can breathe. My intellect loves the simplicity of this space, just the essence, no expansion. And my heart, the very core of who I am, what I value, is so loud in this space. That peace, that forgiveness, that gentleness is so pronounced in this sanctuary. I feel this space brings me closer to God, to that one who is sacred, divine. And yet, such a natural relationship, not distant. The one being who knows me completely as I am, as a soul. Anytime I want, I can come into this space, rebuild my connection to God and to myself, energize myself in this space. Om Shanti. Thank you so much for joining. I can't believe we're at the end of November. We do have the December schedule about done, but I can't recall what the topic is next week. So we will post those as always. Nora's wonderful at sending this information out. So we will definitely share what the topic is for next week. And thank you so much for joining, for sharing your energy. Until we meet again, Om Shanti.